Hi everyone, welcome to another video of John Drama Paints. This time we'll continue painting the Iron Golem Armator together in the color scheme you can see in the picture right now. The second part that we are going to work on is the non-metallic gold. I hope you'll enjoy it, and if you do, please consider liking and subscribing. In addition, I do have a Patreon where there are weekly video releases, similar to the one that you're watching right now. So if you liked it and want to see more straight away, consider heading over there and checking it out. The link will be in the description box of this video. Enough advertising for now. Let's dive straight in and paint some minis. Hello guys, and welcome back to yet another video of John Drama Paints. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I paint the brass kind of goldish metals on this Iron Golem Chaos Dwarf. I actually don't know if they have their own set names or that they don't, etc. So I'm just going to refer to him like that. And in the first video we did the red, and now we're going to dive straight in. So what did I do in preparation of this video? I base coated all the metallic parts that we're going to paint in this brass metal-like color with Rhinox hide, which you see on my palette right here. Besides that, on my wet palette, I have three other colors lined up, which is Scrag Brown, Baylor Brown, Ushepti Bone, and actually color I'm missing, which I'm going to just add to it now, is Army Painter Matte White. Just add a little dot of that there. Now, what I'm gonna do, the first color I'm gonna start with is gonna be Scrag Brown. And with the Scrag Brown, we're gonna lay the foundation of where we want our metal effects. So for this video, let's focus a little bit on some of the edges, because we know, guys, that edges catch more light. So edge highlighting is fairly easy. Now, you already have the highlights on the red, so you could kind of use that as a point of where you want your brightest highlight to be, but edges catch more light in general. So for this, the edge highlights will need to go a little bit deeper or further, I should say, than simply copying the exact pattern as we did on the red adjacent armor plate. So just give it a nice coat, just like that. Here we're gonna do the same. This is also the focal point of the model, so the brightest area where we want also the most attention to go to, or one of the focal points next to the face. And so we want it a bit more brighter over there. In some areas we might not go so far. Do we have an example? Here for example on the knee. On the knee we just want to focus on the visible part. So just like that. There it will suffice. On top I made a little mistake there. You can just go back. You see, sometimes I don't even wash my brush off. Just water it down a bit and correct any mistake I might have made. There we go. Now I'm gonna wash up, because these are the edges, and you can do something similar to what I did over most of the edges. Now here what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the highlight, we're gonna copy the highlight as we did with the red, just to make it look a little bit more natural. So our highlights will be over the middle and will fade out into shadows to the sides. Because if we now start following more traditional non-metallic metal highlights, like on this flat surface, this cross he has in his visor, if that would be a flat surface, if we consider it that, the highlight would settle at the bottom. But I think doing it more in line with the highlights on the red armor will give an altogether nicer finish. Whether that's true, I don't know actually, because I didn't paint it, but that's part of the decision-making process that I go through when it comes to these things. Whether I'm gonna do his little chaos symbol or his, I think it's a pretty weird thing that he has there, but I'm not quite sure what it is besides of a symbol. Anyway, I haven't decided whether I want to do it brass, goldish, bronzish, or in just steel or iron or steel. I guess iron, since they're Iron Golems, not steel golems. Again here, the ridges, we want to drag them down a little bit further. The rivets, I'm gonna give a little bit of paint all around. Just the top though. making sure that some of that rhinox hide is still showing to the sides, because that will really help them stand out, make them easier, notable a little bit more easy, and then they're going to be much better accentuated, which will add to the level of visible detail on your model. So that is something to consider. With the sort of the black lining, you always want to do that a little bit, but sometimes you want it to be subtle, but generally you want to have some of it present on your model. Same here, even though we want these parts shaded, we want to have that ring catch some paint, just again to accentuate it. Now here, again, this may be a good example. Here, we're gonna add the scrag brown, and you see I went pretty far, but I didn't go all the way, because it can fade into the shadows over there. That would also be more in line with the red again. And there we go. Just like that, we've added some highlights to the helmet. And before I will continue to the next step, I want to show you a little bit about how I'm going to go about it on the beard. Now, with the beard, guys, you see there's a lot of these coins, and actually we're going to follow the more natural shadows, so or highlights. So for that matter, here these parts are going to be the reflective surfaces. So to the sides, we want to keep that shadow. And here we're going to drag them down a little bit. There we go. We might end up focusing to a side with these highlights as well as this continues down, because if we do it down all the way, could work, because we have maximum contrast, dark, maximum contrast, as well as doing it to the sides. So I haven't really decided yet, but while talking I can see how we have some options there. All right. And you see him just giving them a watered down coat. I might do 2 passes, but just like that, we're gonna block in the parts on his beard. So I suggest, guys, that you do it all over your Chaos Dwarf as well, and I'll see you back when that's been done. So see you in a bit. Alright guys, and welcome back, and let's continue directly with painting the gold on this Chaos Dwarf. Well, you know, after this, or in between this video, I am really gonna look up if he has a name or a dedicated name or whatsoever, so I can start calling him by his proper name. But right now, we're gonna go to Baylor Brown. I loaded some up, and we're gonna apply it. So here, I'm gonna drag it upwards. Baylor Brown technically would be our middle color, but since he has a break here, it would be more visible just below the break, or below the cut. Here, we are going to look more closely on this edge to where we put the highlight on the red, because we know we put it there. Usually, we would want to drag it upward towards the highlight, but it's quite complicated with the direction of the model. So let me see if I can do it like this. If you hold him upside down, I guess you could drag the highlight more upwards toward where you want it to be. There we go. The same goes for this side. There we go. And as you can see, well, I don't know how well it shows on camera, but already I think we start building up that effect real nice, even though it's just a second color over our base coat. And this would technically be our mid-tone. So we're just gonna apply this and make sure to leave some of that scrag brown. And just like with the red, if you want to go for a high level of contrast, make sure that you leave that you make the amount of paint less and less. So we did a lot of it with the scrag brown, and we're gonna do about a half to a third of that scrag brown. We're gonna go over with Baylor. Here on the middle of the faceplate, let me think. Here in the middle, I want to highlight, right? So I will go over it. There we go. Trying to leave some of that other color showing on the edges. Not like a weird stark line, but you know, just making sure that it settles mostly on the middle. Even if we do it in its entirety, my apologies, we could get away with it. So it's not such a huge deal. Since we use thin down paint, sometimes it's good to give some things 2 passes just to increase the coverage. And if you're then again more specific with your placement, or you leave a little of the first layer untouched, it will start to create a transition on its own just by using one color. Now, doing this, let's move on and let's see what we can do. What else can we do? It's nice to show here. Yeah, so here we were finishing the faceplate. So these ridges, we're also gonna start being more selective. So just gonna make sure this brush is kind of losing its tip. That is not great. It's not gonna help us at all, especially on such fine detail. So we're gonna focus everything more towards the middle. So except for the rivets, the edges on these things, they could get some extra paint. So, but except for the rivets, you don't even want to have it shine all the way around, because in the middle on the sides, we might even want it pure black. There we go. Just like that. The rivets again, as I mentioned, we might want to do with Baylor Brown, but now I'm starting to doubt. So let's just give some of these rivets that we know some Baylor Brown, just like that, and leave this first one of the side out of it. Might actually work. Can help us with some of that contrast. And there we go. All right, and like that, the color is really starting to take shape already. All right, let's move on to the beard and do a little illustration on how to do that before continuing on to the next color in the chain. And here we actually want to make sure it's quite thin down. And what we're going to do here, same as before, drag it down. Here the edges we want to accentuate. But for the rest, we just want to focus on the color settling at the bottom half of these, whatever they are, these details that make up his beard. Just drag it down. Make sure to lift your brush in between. Once you get the hang of it, it'll go really fast. All right, and just continue doing that all over the details, and I'll see you back for the next color where we're going to be applying Ushepti Bone. So see you in a bit, guys. All right, let's continue. And after the application of Baylor Brown, guys, we're going to move to Ushepti Bone. And actually, I think Ushepti Bone might be a little bit too stark, because I think I barely managed to push it with the Baylor Brown, between Baylor Brown and Scrag Brown. So we're just going to mix up just a little off, maybe a little more off. It's about a 2-to-1 mix, I suppose, between Ushepti Bone and Baylor Brown, just to be a little bit safer when we get to these higher highlights. Make sure that my brush has a fine tip. It's quite runny. Don't know if that's exactly what I want, so I just took a little bit off it on a piece of paper towel. And here again, gonna focus on about 1/3 of what we just painted with the Baylor Brown. Again, trying to increase the level of contrast. And just to make safe, when you do steps like these, it sometimes can be safer just immediately then go to the next step, which would be Ushepti, which I shouldn't have applied so rashly. There we go, that side went well. Now let me just wash off the brush and correct the little error we made here on the other side a little bit. So I decided to opt for, didn't really look at the mistake yet, so let me just hold the model at a kind of a skewed angle. All right, so we just with some Baylor Brown. Along that upper edge, we already fixed it. Go back, because I went over a little bit of too much of the Ushabti, and give it the coat that I wanted to. And just like that, you see, it gives the impression that it's starting to pop. Now, let's do that here on the faceplate. Focusing a little bit there, a little bit here, just like that. The edges catching it there as well, here at the bottom, and the rivet. And just like that, I think the faceplate is also already starting to pop quite nicely. But let's immediately go to the Ushabti bone. I kind of repeat that process, a little bit more selective, and see the result. You notice I'm quiet because I'm almost holding my breath when it comes to these fine details. And just like that, you see it's really starting to pop and give that metallic feel. So continuing, I guess you could do this straight with Ushabti bow. Maybe I was a bit too panicky, but since this, I do this quite often if I'm unsure about transition colors and whether I can make such a strong jump. So maybe it's good to illustrate, because that's basically what I do to try and deal with that. Let's see, how can we paint this in? Just like that. Let me just finish this shoulder pad up here, or this shoulder armor. I guess he's like tank top armor. Let me just do this, hold at a weird angle. If it's out of view, my apologies. There we go. And let's move towards the beard and see what we can do. Here it might be useful to have two of these mixes at hand, because maybe further down you don't want to full Ushabti anymore and focus a little bit on top for that as well. So again, same deal. Dragging it down, focusing on the lower third of the model. Maybe try and get the model in view a little bit better. There we go. When you do the edges or the ridges, you can do them all the way down. That's actually gonna create a real nice effect that will help you with the metallics. And there we go. So moving to Ushabti bone, just to illustrate what I mean. So let's imagine we stick to the top three for Ushabti bone. And we'll go lighter than Ushabti bone, but just to give you an idea of what I mean. Doing the edges. Maybe just the top of the edge of the fourth one. And, you know, just like this, if we do this all around, it will create a nice little transition for the beard as well. I'm not sure, we'll see if I'm gonna go around and see what I'll do with the beard, but you'll see in the next step when we'll go to the final highlight, guys. So stay tuned. Welcome back, guys. In this video, we're gonna directly continue painting the beard on this Chaos Dwarf, and I actually painted a little bit on his faceplate and the beard already with the new mix, which is between Ushabti bone and white, but I didn't press record, so that's kind of silly. So I'm gonna show you a little bit on different details what I mean, because with this detail, it's actually almost the final highlight. You could go as high as white. I don't know if I'll need it, but this you really want to use sparingly, just to kind of make things pop. So here even you just very little lines, here just little dots at the top. Just like a half line in that circle down there. Here this knee pad, just really above where the highlight with the lightest color of the red is located. Just like that, just to, you know, give the illusion of that extra little shine. Same here at the bottom, make sure I get a fine tip. Just there in the edge. Just like that, and just like that. And with that, you just make your way around the model, and that would actually be it for the gold or the brass. I don't know how we would classify it. I was thinking about making it something other than gold because I wanted to do, what do you call it? Some weathering, but gold doesn't really weather or age, so it just stays the same. So if we can turn it into something like copper and get away with it, we could glaze in some blues, which I think would work really nice. But still, we haven't glazed anything yet, so we also don't need to rush per se. We can also wait for what happens when we finish up, for example, other details like the skin tone, because I think for the skin tone, I quite like the box art, or at least the colors used on the box art. Makes me feel like an old like Korn warband, these Iron Golems. Like the old Chaos Warriors. I don't know if you remember with the weird poses where you got like the what do you call it? The regiment with the movement tray and stuff like that. And I really like these models actually, but I don't know. Maybe it's a bit not enough color in it yet. So let's wait for maybe a palish skin with some cold colors, and it will create some contrast between all these warm colors that we've been using. But for now, I must say, let me just put the palette away real fast, so we have a nice shot to end on. So this is going to be what the Chaos Dwarf is looking about right now, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I hope you do too, and if you do, please paint along, and I'll see you in the next video where we will probably start on painting his skin. Perhaps we'll do some of the metal parts, but we'll decide in due time. See you in the next video, guys. Bye-bye. And welcome back to another like bonus video, I suppose we'll call it, because I couldn't resist continuing to work on this little Chaos Dwarf guy for the Iron Golems. And what I thought was missing was still the cold kind of color. So I prepared a couple of glazes for us to work with. And one of the glazes, a new color I recently picked up is what is it? Not Canter Blue. It's Night Lord's Blue, and the other one is a glaze of Rhinox Hide, which are both about 1 part paint to about 4, 5, 6 parts water. And you're gonna use the blue first to glaze into the shadows of the red, because I think blue gives a really nice cooling contrast compared to the very warm color that is red. So it's very thin down paint. If I run it over my thumb, you can barely see any effect. There's barely any paint left on it. So what I'm doing by applying this glaze is effectively putting on a very, very thin layer of paint, which will cover everything that we drag it over. And by that, because it's still a very thin layer of paint, it will kind of work like a layer paint, but barely noticeable, and kind of, because it's like a very flimsy piece of paper that you put over a thing, and it becomes just a little less see-through, or a little less visible, or the thing underneath just becomes very slightly less visible. That's what's happening with glazes. So by glazing towards the shadows, I'm also slowly but surely hiding some imperfections in my blending mix. By doing that, of course, by putting on these flimsy layers of paint all over, I forgot a little piece of detail. Sorry, I should keep it in focus, to paint over there. That's fine, we'll get to it. Of course, I'm also reducing the contrast, and this is not great because we very often want maximum contrast. That's why sometimes I don't go over the whole area, just go over select area and drag it down. For example, with this dark glaze, this blue glaze, we're going to drag it into the shadows. So we're smoothing those transitions ever so slightly, but also increasing the contrast because we make the shadows darker and we leave the highlights for what they are. Simultaneously, we add blue, a very cold color, to red, a warm color. So in that way, we're also working on contrast. See, here we just did a couple of passes. Already I'm gonna stop here because I don't want to be too overzealous when it comes to that. So here with the Rhinox hide, I'm just gonna drag it upwards in these gold brass kind of parts because I thought it looked too yellowy. So you might wanna, sometimes you wanna do it piece by piece, but I'm a little bit impatient, and I think we painted this whole model in one evening so far, so I hope to finish him in 2 or 3 evenings and kind of, if I can manage that with a quality that I like, which is currently the case, I might actually be able to finish like a Warcry warband within like a decent amount of time. To a standard that I'm actually pretty satisfied with. So we're just gonna let this dry. There's not a lot of other gold parts that need glazing, so I'm just gonna blow on it so it can dry a little bit faster. All right. Anyway, whilst we're waiting for that one layer to dry, I'm just gonna paint a little bit of the detail that I missed. Since we're just gonna add it to the, I guess I'll just add this to the video about the gold. Just gonna add some Baylor brown here. Just like that. Is it dry? Yeah, it is dry, so we can add another layer of that brown, deepen the shadows, smoothen those transitions a little bit while also applying a very thin semi-shade. And there we go. You see, this is, I think this is a really nice effect that we get from it. So now going back on my palette to the Ushapti bone, kind of fixing this little detail while I wait for my glaze to dry. Is it in focus? No, it is not. And there we go. This is already much better. So let's see. It's still not dry. I'm gonna add one more pass here over the face into the shadows to increase the contrast in that area. Maybe add one more pass of blue, darken the shadows, make them a little bit cooler. There we go. In here as well. In the shadows over there. You see, because it's such thin paint, I can be a little bit haphazard with it because the effect is going to be very minimal. And as I said, I want to do this a little bit faster than the last model I painted in Thundrick, which took quite a long time. So with that, we're gonna go to the last pass over the beard. No, you know what? I'm actually gonna call it done. So we've actually added a couple of glazes, blended it a little bit together to come together a little bit more nicer. And in the next video, we'll then continue painting additional details. So see you in the next video, guys.